Happy Monday, and welcome to the Uncensored Journey podcast, a raw, unfiltered guide to truths that matter. We are diving deep, getting real about what it takes to truly transform inside and out. Ready for truth? Ready for transformation? You're in the right spot. I'm Cindy, and with me is Gabriella. Let's get uncensored. Hi, Gabriella.
Hi, Cindy.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Today, we are going to be talking about the different learning styles because as we've been working on this podcast together, we've discovered that our learning styles are very different. And so we have dedicated a whole podcast to this topic because, there's a lot of different ways people learn and everything is valid. And it's important to kind of know where other people might be coming from. So with that, do you want to get into it and I'll hop in?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I agree. And it's very humorous when you are not on the same learning style because interacting, if you're not aware of it, can get quite tricky. And in those instances, it's good to be curious. And that is a muscle I'm growing. So it's been fun. But yeah, so there are four different types of learning. There are visual, auditory, kinesthetic, reading and writing. And there are people that are mixed. So you could have a combination of the two. And it's really important to notice how someone is taking in information, especially if you are doing a presentation or doing a podcast or doing a workshop, in any situation where you're presenting and you're communicating information. It's good to be aware how people absorb that information. So yeah, and over the last few years, I've been more cognizant of that, and it's been really fun to notice people's styles and how I get to interact with them in a better way.
Awesome. And what with those labels of the different types of learning, where do you fall into that framework?
I'm auditory kinesthetic, so with a dash of visual, but I oscillate between all three. What about you?
I think that I'm a combo of all four, actually. It just depends on what it is. Um,
Mhm.
I can read something and articulate what it's saying, but you know, and I learn how to like. But if it's like an idea or something, it's okay. Like I can read it and I can articulate it what the idea or the meaning behind it is. But if it's something that I need to learn how to do, it's definitely a visual and like hands-on experience for me if I can physically do it. I like to cook and bake. I think we've discussed that on here many times, and I can read a recipe just fine, but I like to watch somebody do it. That's how I learned though that's kind of how I learned to cook in the first place was by watching my grandma, my aunts, and them showing me how to do things, and that's carried over into my adulthood. And um, yeah, I think auditory is probably the hardest for me, but it depends again, it depends on what it is. I can listen to a podcast or I can listen to an audiobook and absorb the information, but in the gym, that's a different story. My coach will tell me something and he'll walk away and then I say, "Wait, wait, wait, what did you just say?" So there's that. But yeah, I guess it's just a combo. It just depends on the situation for me. So maybe my brain is just doesn't work like everybody else's. I don't know.
No, I think it's fair to say that everyone, I think it's contextual, right? The learning style is definitely contextual, and it depends what you're doing. I could relate to that, and I think that's okay.
I agree, but I think that you had brought up a good point about recognizing other people and how they learn and how they do things. and based off of their speech and how they explain things. I
Mm.
think that's important to definitely pay attention to, and just be open to somebody's not gonna grasp something the same way that you are. And so maybe if you can figure out a different way to say it, or figure out a different way to show them, or whatever the case may be, just being open to different forms of communication.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. It's adjusting your communication is everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and also not being afraid to ask, like, well, how do you prefer me to explain this to you? Do you want to see it? Do you want me to tell you? Do you want me to write it down? Um, I know for me in like especially in a job, I'll when I remember when I was first working, like my first job out of college, people would show me how to do things and I would write it down step by step so then I can go back and look at the step by step instructions, so I'm reading it but I can see what they were doing in my head as I'm reading these instructions, to then not have to keep asking the same questions over and over. So I've come up with some ways for myself to be able to like overcome, I guess, my different our differences in getting information. Um, and also, it's a good way to like collaborate with people too, right? Because I think this is what's special about our relationship is we take in information super different, but we have the same kind of passion for this kind of the same things. And so our message is similar, but the way we get there is different. And I think that's very valid, and it makes us a good team because of our our differences that are the same. I don't know how to say it, but I think that's also like kind of a problem with just within the world too, right? If people are coming at something two different ways, but they're saying the same things. I've seen so many people, especially online, arguing different quote unquote different points. They're saying the same exact thing, but they're hearing it differently. Each one of them are hearing it differently. And I'm like, wait, but you're saying the exact same thing. But it's just so funny. But people just don't hear the same things the same.
Mhm.
Um, it's so interesting, and just being able to be flexible in your communication and be willing to say it a different way or try a different way, or be a little have a little compassion and figure it out. So
Yeah, that's exactly why we're also going to talk about labels today, because that's the perfect segue. We I think everyone has a different way of thinking about everything, right? Like the way what I define as communication, or what I define as intimacy, romance, love, sex, you define it completely different, and so do a billion other people. And so I think depending on your environment, your experiences, and the period in which you grew up, you're going to have different labels for different things, for different experiences. And so it's always good to, when you don't understand something or someone or what they're saying, to prevent getting into a heated discussion, to come from a place of curiosity and say, hey, what does that actually mean to you? I'm curious, like, where, how does that work, and how do you think about it? I think we've had several examples where I had one label for plant medicine, for example, and then you had a different label, and they mean two completely different things to both of us.
yeah, exactly. I wonder how many problems in the world could be solved, but people just were real willing to have a conversation and collaborate um instead of just
Option.
going to fighting,
Yeah.
right? Because I mean our different definition of plant medicine was cleared up very quickly by asking, well, what do you think plant medicine, what do you think when I say plant medicine? And like we were able to be like, oh, okay. And then also on that token, I was able to see your point of it, and I agreed with your point of it, and you were and my or your definition of it, and vice versa. So it's not like you were wrong and I was right, or and I
Mhm.
was right and you were, or I was wrong and you were right. It was that we were coming at it differently, and both were valid. And I think, like again, I think that happens a lot just out in the world, and in in the business place, and um politics, and the grocery store, and everywhere it's just people I think are just too quick to argue instead of just ask questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also, when I think labels, I kind of get a little sad because as a society, we keep adding labels and little boxes, and we keep adding divisions between us. There's so many labels in the sexual content, like sex positive, all the LGBTQ, etc. community, all the gender positivity and all of those things. I believe that there's a divine masculine, divine feminine within every person. And so to me, um, I could respect it, but at the same time, I'm kind of questioning it because all these labels that we're attaching to ourselves, the ultimate result is segregation and separation from each other. And so I wonder about that and how that's impacting us, and, all the political divisions and I mean, everything. We're so divided when we could just be united. Mhm.
I agree. I think often that in our want to be unique, it's just creating more, like you said, more division, because now I'm this thing and you're this thing, but really we're two humans, in our case, in America, on Earth, like living in this world, like trying to survive and get by and do good things, whatever the case may be. And I think if you dig deeper, well, maybe not even deep, like a freaking onion, right? Just take off the first little peel, right? And you'll realize, like, you have so much more in common. There's more commonalities than differences in most of these cases. It's just, you're right. These labels are out of control, and also like, and there's there's like 5 labels to mean the same thing. But then if you get the wrong label for what that person specifically wants, then you all of a sudden are a whatever, like you don't like them or whatever.
Bigot
And I'm just like,
or
wait,
yeah.
but it means the same thing. I agree with you. There's just so much stuff happening out there that's I think could just be so squashed, if again back to the whole just asking questions. Like, how hard is it just to ask a freaking question? I guess pretty hard. We argue about everything in this world, don't we?
Yeah, yeah, maybe so. But it's also how you grow up. Because I didn't grow up, even though I had very intelligent and smart parents, I was not really taught to question authority or to question anything. And it may also been that, I lived in an ex-communist satellite country, and maybe that's why I was not taught to ask questions. But that's a muscle that I'm developing now as an adult, and it's been fun. There's definitely a lot less conflict now that I'm using that muscle, being curious.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure I was encouraged to question authority either, but I've always done it. And maybe that's because I grew up in a free country, and where there wasn't there you were, you had free speech and all of the freedoms that come with living in America. But I don't know, but I've always questioned. My mom tells stories about me as a kid that I think are hilarious. The one that like totally sticks out to me, I'm just gonna say it because it's so funny, is all the kids in my neighborhood were older than me, and I would always try to play with them, and I was like 2 maybe, and
Mhm.
I came home and I had poked my eye with a stick because the older girls told me to do it. And so my mom was like, "Well, why did you poke your eye with a stick?" And she's like, and I say, "Well, because they told me, they said it, to do it. So I did it." And she said, "Well, if they told you to jump off of a bridge into the water, would you do that?" And I was like, "Well, how deep is the water? How cold is the water? Is it going to hurt as I jump down? How high is the bridge?" Like I had all these questions before, like to make an informed decision, I guess. I don't know where those questions were when I was poking my eye with a stick, but I definitely had those questions about jumping off of a bridge. And so, I've always just questioned things. I've always just done it. So, our question, like, ask a bunch of questions. I also grew up in a super multicultural neighborhood where everybody was a different ethnicity.
Mhm.
So that it was never there was no division amongst any of the kids. It was just we were all kids in the neighborhood. We all went to the same school. We all had the same teachers. We all had the same bikes and the same friends and the same all the stuffs. So it was kind of nice to grow up in that situation. And I guess I take that for granted and don't realize that other people didn't grow up like that. So I appreciate your perspective on that because that would never have dawned on me. Look at us communicating and learning new things.
Always, always.
But I think that also goes back to the like just like the labels, but also the learning practices, right? Like promoting inclusivity, like emphasizing the value on our differences, right? We don't our skin color could be different, our body size could be different, our, you know, I don't know, whatever. Our nails could be long or short or whatever the case may be. It could be tall, I could be short, whatever. Um, but just making space to to really get to know that person and who they are instead of what they are. I feel like that's important too. And maybe that's a label thing. Um, I can I I try I've been trying hard to like not label myself as things.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to watch my language on that just for myself personally. Like I stopped saying like I'm fat. I'm saying I have fat, like something that I have, not that I am. So that's helping me a lot with especially out in the world to maybe be a little more understanding about people who I don't know their story, right? And trying to figure out not to put labels on those people either. Like maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's a reason why all these people why they have X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't define who they are as a person. And I think that we've gotten so far with all these labels, we've gotten so far away from who people are as people and like who they are and we're focusing too much on what they are. That's kind of makes me sad, especially the way I grew up in my multicultural neighborhood where nobody gave a fuck. Then I grow up and now everybody gives a fuck.
Yeah, I know. It's quite unfortunate. And
Agreed.
yeah, like I said, it just continues and perpetuates division and it's not an inclusive culture, even though some people would argue that that's the purpose. Like the purpose of having labels in certain communities is to make sure that people are included. And I would argue differently.
I would too.
That it's the opposite.
I would too. And again, a very good example of us coming from completely two different backgrounds, opposites, having different experiences, having a conversation and coming to the same conclusion. You're coming at it from somewhere different than I am and ending up with a similar experience at the end. So I think the conversation is just lost amongst people and I think that really sucks. Everybody's on their phone. I used to go to New York a lot when I was younger. I would spend weekends, just go for the weekend and be on the subway and just talking to people or being like sitting in a restaurant just talking to people or walking on the street and talking to people. Like that's just lost. People are on their phones. People are on their phones doing whatever and no one's getting to know everybody anymore. They're just constantly on their phones seeing what people are wanting them to like what they're seeing how to label people in different things on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. it's become quite a situation. I don't think I'd be mad if we just got rid of, or you were, it was like, I don't know, maybe too many rules, but if people would just like put their phone down and have a conversation, see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. There was, yeah, it's an epidemic of being over technological and just being consumed, and really like there's a massive epidemic and of people being addicted to technology, and they choose technology over human interactions.
I know. I
Yeah.
have my nieces and nephews all, I don't, it's like, just come out and talk to us. One of my nieces just always on the phone, and she has conversations with herself about the TV show or whatever she's watching on her phone. And I'm like, "Yo, come have out and have a conversation with us. Why are you having a conversation with yourself? Like we can talk about it too." But it's just so, I guess a generation thing. Now we're labeling generate now I'm labeling generations, but I don't know. We grew up with, well, I grew up, we're um I'm older than you are, but I grew up with no cell phones and no nothing. I didn't, I had a pager when I was in last years in high school, but that was it.
Yeah.
We all just talked to each other and hung out and rode bikes and played games and hung out, talked on the phone. Nobody talks on the phone. I can go on with this forever, but I think we have digressed way far away from labels at this point.
A little bit, but technology has had a big hand and big impact on the way we communicate. It's a fair point. I think it's on topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're definitely not communicating, and that's kind of the problem just in general in the world, right? I think, like I said earlier, there's people are more similar than different than we realize, and there's just this hesitation to start conversations. I don't get it. I'm happy to talk to people, and I do that, like at the stores and stuff. I'll try to talk to the cashiers, and the older cashiers will straight up have a conversation with me. The younger ones are like, like they don't know what to do. And I always end my interaction with them was like, I appreciate you. Thanks for your help. And then move along my day. So maybe an, a positive interaction will trickle down and cause a ripple effect and positivity throughout the day. I don't know.
At the very least, they know they're appreciated, which is huge. And that's really awesome of you to do.
Listen, we try our best to be good people. That's all we could do, right?
That's right.
Do you have any last minute tidbits to give anybody?
There'll be two things. One is really try to acknowledge people once in a while and tell them how amazing they are and what impact they've made in your life, and see if anything shifts in your interaction with them. And then if you don't understand something, or if someone says something a little off the wall to you, just be curious. Don't come from a place of, oh, they offended me, but oh, I'm curious to see where this is coming from, because that's when judgment fades away, and you could have an honest and deep conversation.
Agreed. And I'm gonna just piggyback off that too, and just keeping an open mind uh, and assuming goodwill instead of harm. So it definitely will help in interactions. It does for me. So awesome. I appreciate your wisdom on this. I know we got off topic a little bit, but we kind of reeled it back in. um, as always.